Now, Jonathan Ball Publishers announced that it's pulling the plug on ActionSA leader Herman Mashaba's unauthorized biography, and that's called The Outsider. It was published by by political analyst Prince Mashele, and it's emerged that contrary to Mashele's initial claims, Mashaba actually did fund the book himself. This has opened up a whole host of questions around the writing and publishing of biographies in general, and perhaps this book more specifically. So let's speak this morning to Melvin Kaabwe, who's with the Booksellers Association of South Africa. He's also part of the task team with the National Book Policy and joins us via our video link this morning. It's great to see you, Melvin. Thanks very much indeed for making time. I'm sure you've tried to keep up with the number of interviews that Prince Mashele has carried out in the last 24 hours. Part of what we now know as a matter of fact is that Herman Mashaba did in fact fund that book to the tune of about 2.5 million rand. The question that then arises is, does adding the word unauthorized to the title mislead the public?
Yes, in terms of the literature scene and how you get books sold, the more controversy around a book, the better. And obviously, I think part of this actually is that it draws more attention to the book. And obviously, you know, if it's on sale, you're going to want to read it now. I think the figure was 12.4 million. Which you know, the author is suggesting that would have been spread over the course of 4 years, and which still works out to almost 3 million rand a month. Now, no author in South Africa, and you can challenge me on this one, gets that much from the principal subject of the biography. That not even a Nelson Mandela. I struggle to see where that would ever have happened. And definitely, as the publisher has said, Jonathan Ball has distanced themselves and said, you know, they were not aware of this kind of an ethical breach, because what it amounts to, and this is what everybody else is saying, if you look at social media and if you look at what the public is saying, is that if you're paying somebody, you know, more than 10 meter to write your biography, how independent and how objective would they be?
Right.
And secondly, what does that say about everything that they've said about you in the past when you were trying to campaign, when you were trying to get elected? Was all of that objective? If that author was a journalist, can that stand up to journalistic scrutiny? Those are the questions.
Right. And I suppose you've answered my next question in some ways, because there are still people asking why all of this matters, right? Why should we care that more than 12 million rand has been spent on a book about somebody writing about somebody else? And part of it is because it matters in the greater context of who these individuals are in public, but more specifically, it matters what is being presented in public as fact.
Yeah. So essentially, what it does is it kind of creates the impression that, you know, there are some people for hire, right? And unfortunately, you know, we see this as being kind of counter to what democratic principles are about, because you know, journalism should be there to safeguard democracy and people's access to information in such a way that it provides them with choices. But if those choices are now being impacted by money and you know, sales of something such as a book, not really mattering in this case, but the fact that they have actually been bought as a journalist, then that presents some issues. I just wanted to let you know that, I mean, South Africans love nonfiction. Nonfiction as a genre in South Africa is by far the biggest. In other words, if you go to an Exclusive Books, which is one of the South African Booksellers Association members, you'll find that there is quite in the top 20, you know, going over the last 5 to 10 years, that the biggest sellers have been nonfiction books. So things to do with state capture, President's Keepers, you know, the Ace Makashule book, all of those, Mandy Wiener's books, most of those are the ones that really do sell. So it is quite a competitive industry. I don't want to, you know, make that something, put that into the mix of people that are thinking about this. But it really is a competitive market. And in order for you to get something out of that market, it really needs to be, the kind of book that fires people's imaginations and gets those people that buy books who are buying nonfiction to actually go for it rather than the others.
To be fair, I can't seem to recall Prince Mashele ever saying that he's a journalist or presenting himself as a journalist. But your point, I think, still stands. He is
political analyst.
Yeah, he's certainly somebody that people look to as some kind of moral authority, for lack of a better term. But in his defense, in one of the interviews, at least, that he conducted in the last 24 hours, he insisted that it was actually the publisher's decision to include the word unauthorized in the title, which, at least from my perspective, seems like where the kind of storm started. Is that likely? Because we've also seen other authors come forward and say, actually, it's the author in many instances who has the final say.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know because Jonathan Ball has said that they were not aware. So they've issued a statement saying that they are not aware. So we take them according to their statement. In this particular case, ordinarily, what would normally happen is that a publisher would commission a book. I haven't, honestly, in the last 20 years, I haven't heard of any book being commissioned by the principal subject as unauthorized. It's a contradiction in terms.
Right.
Because it's either you're participating willingly and it's a biography on you and you agree to the interviews, etc. But for it to be unauthorized, like with the Princess Diana and all of those, the ones that you see about the royals in England, they're unauthorized because they've had no actual commitment from the principal subject to be part of the project. So the misuse or use of unauthorized in this case, sometimes, and you'll see this in the British tabloids as well, is that it tends to make the book more scandalous or appear more scandalous. And when it appears more scandalous, then more people are likely to buy it, which is a marketing ploy which in theory would then have been in the ambit of the production side, on the publication side, not necessarily the author's side. But that's how it normally happens. In this particular case, nothing seems to be normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it's up for grabs who said what.
Sure. Let's stay with the ideal scenarios then. Part of what Prince Mashele also claims is that there is nowhere in the contract that he had with Jonathan Ball any kind of clause that compels him to disclose where he got the money. Again, in normal circumstances, does that sound right?
Again, I cannot speak for Jonathan Ball. They have distanced themselves from this. But what I can say is authors' contracts usually do not go to the level of that detail.
Right.
The ones that I've seen. In fact, as the Book Policy Task Team, one of the members is the president of the Publishers Association of South Africa. And he has long said, Brian Wafaroa, from Juta, and he's often said that there needs to be some kind of standardization in terms of these authors' contracts with publishers to prevent, obviously, exploitation, so that we know in South Africa that the literary community, the artistic community, the creative side is poorly paid. They have to often go to the National Arts Council, etc., to find funding for their projects. So one of the ways that you could solve that kind of a labor problem is by ensuring that the contracts are fair and that people get paid legitimately. And in those contracts and the ones that I've seen, there's no clause that states where somebody gets their funding from. Maybe it's specific to biographies, and maybe it's specific in this case to Jonathan Ball and Prince. They between themselves, they would know. Maybe they should, discuss that a bit more in public. From what I've seen, they have actually shown parts of the contract. And if they did insert that, the question then arises is, why would you insert that? I mean, why would you explicitly say, that where is this funding coming from or where it's not coming from? It kind of seems awkward to me.
Yeah. I'm going to ask what perhaps some people may see as an unfair question. Depending who you ask, there's no such thing as bad publicity when it comes to books, and perhaps this one is no exception. And Prince Mashele, in his defense, said that, if people actually went through the contents of the book itself, perhaps this 12 billion rand might sound a bit more justifiable. With that in mind, does it make sense, or was it the right decision for Donald Ball to actually pull this book from the shelves? Because you and I, who haven't come across the book, now don't really have an opportunity to judge for ourselves whether or not any of this makes sense.
Yes, that's a very good question. I was thinking about that earlier because I did a little bit of research and went and looked for the book. So it's definitely not on Jonathan Ball's website. I've checked. I tried to get it from one of our retailers and I couldn't. But I did see it on Amazon. So look. There's two parts to the question. The one is, and I don't know whether Jonathan Ball, maybe the time difference. Amazon is in the US. Maybe they haven't gotten there in time. I can't speak for Jonathan Ball or their processes, but I did find it on Amazon. The other is that people did read this book. You've got reviews on the back cover, the blurbs on the cover of prominent people that have reviewed the book and have said this is thrilling and exciting, and goes in depth into Herman Mashaba's life. And all of those are glowing reviews. So we come back to the question, well, nobody's saying anything bad about Herman in the book or in the blurb, the people that have read it. So how objective is it? If all you're getting is glowing reviews, and if you look further, this is a man that has had no less than 3 books published about him. He's had the Black Like You. He's had Capitalist Crusade. He's had literally in the last couple of years, he's had 3 books published about him. Now the question arises: is okay, if he's had these other books, did he pay somebody to do those as well? Are they objective? And all of those things. And I think that's the issue. That's where the betrayal comes in from the public, is to say, okay, we would really like to read this book, but, it looks like one of these continuous projects of just being relevant and staying in the public eye. If you're producing a book about you every couple of years, what does that mean?
Sure. Fascinating stuff. It matters, I suppose, who writes what and who enables them to do that. Melvin, it's been great speaking to you. Thanks very much indeed for your time.